Hi, and welcome to my channel. I'm Dave of Urban Astro, and today I think I'm going to go over a little bit of how I plan my targets for the year. And I actually plan them out months and months in advance, as you shall see here on a spreadsheet that I put together. Now, how to acquire targets? The night sky is full of different targets that you can go after. And it really comes down to a question of how much time you want to put in, what kind of telescopes you've got, what kind of cameras you got, and what the impacts of perhaps light pollution are in your particular area. Maybe you're like myself, my backyard is Bortle 8, so I pretty much limit going after broadband targets. I'll go after large, bright broadband objects like the Andromeda Galaxy or maybe the Triangulum, because they're large and they're bright, and when it's a new moon, it provides me an opportunity to shoot them without too much of a problem dealing with light gradients and all that you get with light pollution. But largely in my backyard, I'm for the most part limited outside of a few bright objects. I'm pretty much limited to shooting nebulae, and especially shooting them in narrowband, sulfur, oxygen, and hydrogen. But how do you begin to perhaps even know what kind of targets to go after? You want to produce a list of possible targets and then cull them down to what you can reasonably shoot for each month. So the first thing that I do is there's a number of books that I will go through, and I'll look at the different objects and I'll add them to my list. And I do this every year because one year you may be looking for a particular kind of objects, and then the following year maybe you have a new telescope, and so now a new range of objects are available to you. So I do this every year, and it kind of primes the pump in a sense. And there's 3 books that I essentially use. The first one is by Reuben Pier, and it's called 100 Best Astrophotography Targets. A monthly guide for CCD imaging with amateur telescopes. Well, I definitely have an amateur telescope, but I don't have a CCD. Most of us have moved over to CMOS, but the value of this book is still really, really good. And what I particularly like about it is that it has information. In this particular case here, you can see here is Bode's Galaxy and the cigar. M81 and M82 gives you a picture of it so you can see what it looks like, and it gives you some basic information about that particular target. Talks about photographing it and imaging it. Tells you, that M82 can be enriched by adding H-alpha to the red channel. Despite its size, M81 shows little detail in its spirals arms unless long exposures are obtained away from light pollution. And so it goes over and tells you little hints and information about the various objects that are in the book, and it's done by month. Now, one thing for my friends down in the southern hemisphere is that these books are largely geared towards the northern hemisphere that I'm going to be talking about, but I'm sure that you have your own set of books that you can review through and go through and determine what targets you may want to shoot and add them to your target. Another book that I use is Messier Astrophotography Reference Guide, and this one's by Alan Hall. And what I like about this particular book, this goes over all the Messier objects, which is fantastic. It basically Like here's Messier 41, which is an open cluster. Shows you a picture of it, tells you a little bit about it, and then it shows you what the relative view would be based upon the size of your telescope, and it gives you a sense as to how large that object may be if you have a scope that's in a similar range of focal lengths. So this is very, very helpful to help you understand whether or not it's an object that makes sense for you to shoot based upon the telescopes that you have. And so I go through this because, one year I may want to just shoot galaxies out of this thing, and I may want to hit those galaxies, or I may be looking for star clusters because I need to add more clusters to my collection, and so I'll go through this to look at all the different star clusters and stuff. And again, what I do is I add to my list. And then the final book that I use, which is really for me my main resource that I use, is called the Astrophotography Planner, and this is the second edition. He may have come out with an updated edition. I probably have to go look, but this is by Charles Bracken, and this is a fantastic book. What I like about what he does here is that he does the format here, which I find to be helpful. And so, for instance, here, what I'm showing here is a page of the cone and the fox fir and the Christmas tree cluster. And it shows you kind of how large that image is, or where these different components and pieces are, kind of in a star map. But what I really, really like is that he gives you a sense as to when you can shoot this and how long it's in the sky based upon what your latitude is, whether or not you're around 30 degrees north or 40 or 50 degrees, how long in the sky it would be for how many hours. And so it really becomes helpful to help figure out how long an object is in the sky that you'll be able to shoot, so you can figure out what your shooting sequence is, whether or not you can get the object in maybe 2 nights, or if you have to stretch it over 4 or 5 because it's just not in the sky for that long. It's very, very helpful, and it goes over each and every single object with the same kind of information. And I take all this information and I put it into a spreadsheet. So here on the screen is the spreadsheet, part of the spreadsheet that I have. And this is where I list all of my objects. And you notice here that I've got different columns. So I've got a plan column here, like what months would I be planning on shooting this particular object. It just kind of helps me at a glance to see what months a particular object might be good to shoot for that particular month or range of months. And this is based off of right here, this January through December, how many hours it's up in the nighttime sky. For my latitude, I'm at 30 degrees. So here's my list. And this list is objects that I've gotten from the books that I had just spoken about. And as I'm going through the books and I find an object that is of interest for me, I'll go ahead and I'll log it here in this particular tab on my spreadsheet. And what I'll do is I'll try to start to collect different kinds of information. So you can see here that I have 2024 plan, which is just a list of months that I could possibly shoot this target. And this list of months is based upon this section over here, where I have each month listed out, first half of the month, the second half of the month, and roughly how many hours it would be in the sky during those months, to give me kind of a ballpark sense as to when is the best time to photograph this particular object. And then, of course, in this column here, I've got the object, and I generally try to do what the catalog number is, and it has multiple catalog numbers. I'll try to at least add some of the major catalog numbers, like here for the Seagull Nebula, which is Sharpless 296, but it's also NGC. So it has an NGC number and it has a Sharpless number. So I generally will try to include both of those if I think about it. What the name of the object is, and then what constellation that particular object can be found in. And then what I do is, as I evaluate the object, and I'll evaluate the objects by looking at them in 2 different or 3 different really applications. The first one that I may do would be something like Stellarium, which I have here on the screen. So right here is the clamshell nebula, and I may evaluate that and say, okay, based upon the size of this thing, maybe here's a Rokinon. So what does it look like in the Rokinon? The Rokinon will get all of this area as well as Deneb. Maybe that might be something worth looking at. But if not, then I can go back. Let me go back to my Apertura. And there we go. So there's my Apertura. And I can tell here that it's most likely, because of the image here, that it's a narrowband image. And so you can kind of look at things like Stellarium to kind of get a sense of the image, what it might look like. If you don't have Stellarium, you can always use Telescopius. Telescopius.com is really, really great. So for instance, here I was looking at the Bubble Nebula and the Lobster Claw, and wanted to see what the object would look like if I shot it with my my Apertura 75Q, and this is what it would look like. So I could get this whole entire region right there in one shot. And again, this would be narrowband, but at least it gives you some kind of an idea. And then the other thing that I will do sometimes, if I want to get a better sense, is I'll come out here to Astrobin, and I will look for similar size telescopes. So for instance, like this person here shot with an ASCAR FRA 400, which is very close to my Apertura 75Q. We're just off by a little bit, but it would give me enough sense as to what is possible with this focal length. And again, this is a 2-panel mosaic right there, and so this tells me that there's probably a top panel here and a bottom panel, and I can see that he put in 15 hours of hydrogen alpha and 20 hours of O3 in order to get this beautiful picture, and he's done a fantastic job with processing this thing. A lot of great dark nebula and stuff like that. But you can use these tools to get a sense as to what you can shoot these objects with, and whether or not you're going to need certain filters, and you can figure out whether or not, based upon what the object is, whether or not you need to be at a dark sky site, or for me, being in my backyard, what telescope based on focal length, and what camera I may want to shoot with. And if I'm going to do a mosaic, what might I do, how many panels? And again, I can go into Telescopius, and Telescopius will help me figure that out, because you can do mosaics here in Telescopius. So I can go 1x2, so that's a 1x2 mosaic, so I can get that whole entire region right there, which actually would probably be a pretty nice mosaic. But I'm probably going to want to do about 20% overlap. There we go. See, so you get the lobster claw and the bubble, and I'm not sure what this nebulosity over here is, but you can see how you can figure out whether or not something would make sense as a mosaic by using telescopics. That's how I use it. And so I'll fill this all out so that way I at least get a shot list. So this is my main target list. So then what I do, I put together my shot list for the year. So here is my shot list for the year. And you notice I got a tab here. It's 2024, 2025 observation plan. I had one for 2024. It was really 2023 to 2024. I just labeled it 2024, but it was really started in October of 23, moved into 24. But here's what I'm going to be shooting for this year. And you can see here that I've got it basically broken up into two areas. One is backyard and one here is dark site. For me, any place is a dark site if it's not Bortle 8, because my backyard is Bortle 8. And so I try to go to places that are anywhere from Bortle 1 to Bortle 2 to Bortle 3. I'm really happy. There's some places, if I go about an hour and a half out west, it gets down to around Bortle 2. And if I go up north, south of Flagstaff, about 60 miles south of Flagstaff, up on the Mungion Rim, which is at about 7,000 feet, I get Bortle 2, Bortle 3 skies, so I'm pretty happy there. So those are my dark site that I talk about here. And you can see here that I have it broken down by month and what I call new moon times. Now, I need to explain, because you're looking at a range here and you're going, well, what's he talking about, new moon times? Well, what this is when the moon is less than 50%. So basically what I do is I'll look for when the moon is in the third quarter, into the new moon, into the first quarter. In that time period right there, the moon is less than 50%. And for me, that is optimal imaging time, especially for broadband targets, especially in my Bortle 8 skies, or if I go to a dark site. I don't do a whole lot of narrowband imaging at dark sites. You see most of these are going to be either reflection nebula, or they're going to be specifically broadband targets. The exception to that, as you can see here in November, is Andromeda and Triangulum. Those are galaxies, but they're so bright that I can easily shoot them in my backyard. And during the new moon or periods of time when the moon is less than 50%, I can get some pretty decent images. And so that's what these periods here are. It just gives me kind of a working reference as to when the moon is not more than 50%, but it's less than 50%. And again, a large part of this is so that I can figure out when I can go up and I can shoot in my dark sites, when I can go and I can shoot some of these objects that require dark sites. And so I have the list of objects. If they're in red, that means that they're ones that I really want to be able to grab and I want to be able to get. So like this coming weekend, I'm going to go up north because it's going to be still hot here in Phoenix. It's still going to be like 106 to 108 in the daytime, and it's still going to be at midnight, still going to be up in the mid 90s. It's just ridiculous right now. But I can go up north, be at 7,000 feet, be cool evenings, and I'm going to shoot the Flying Squid Nebula because it's an object that I really have wanted to get now for a couple of years, and I'm going to shoot that with my 75Q, and I'll be shooting that LRGB plus H alpha and O3, and that's what I'm going to be shooting. I was thinking of shooting the Scarlet Letter, but then when I went over my list back here on my objects, I was going over my list, figured that I could do the flying squid. I'm going to go shoot that. So things in red are things that are high priority for me to go shoot. If it's in black, if I can't shoot those other objects and that one is available to me, then I'll go ahead and I'll shoot that. But it's more of a low priority targets for me. So you can see that I pretty much got myself planned out through pretty much January. I got to look at some of these things here for March, and for April I still have to figure some of these things out. I know that all this stuff here is definitely going to be red. In fact, all this stuff here is going to be red because I want all that stuff red and bold, because I want to be able to shoot all these things. And in June, I also want the eagle and the triffid and the lagoon. I went to those. I got actually the lagoon and the triffid, but I'm not happy with what I got. I didn't have enough integration time. So I will definitely go ahead and shoot these guys. Probably not with the RC. I'll probably shoot them with the Skywatcher. The Skywatcher 150p, which is 6-inch f4 Newtonian. And so that's my planning, and this is what I do. And I pretty much plan everything out like this, so that way I can go to a site and instead of searching for a target, I already know what targets I'm going to shoot. It just makes it so much easier for me to go ahead and knock this stuff out and not worry about looking for like what target am I going to shoot tonight. I already kind of know what targets I want to shoot. So it all starts with going through my books, and I also use videos. If somebody is shooting a target that I've never heard of before, I'll go ahead and I'll add it to this list, and then once I've got it added to this list, I'll try to fill it out as best as I can so that I can put that into my planning. And then again, you know, when I go through, like I still have to do kind of the spring of 2025, and there's going to be a lot of galaxies here that I'm really going to have to explore and see whether or not I want to shoot them and when I can possibly shoot them. Like I say, right now I've got like 125 objects listed in here, and I imagine that by the time I'm done putting objects in here, I'll have close to like 300 probably by the time I get done. And there's a lot of objects here that it's going to take me years and years and years and years to shoot. So I'm not going to run out of things to shoot. So if you found any of this to be at all helpful, please feel free to like the video down below. I greatly appreciate it. If you like content like this, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe. It wouldn't hurt my feelings. And until next time, clear skies and happy guiding.